Good morning. My name is David. Welcome to week 30 of 52 churches in 52 weeks. Each week we get in a vehicle and we drive to a different church setting. So if you'd like to follow along, hit the like button and subscribe. You can also check out Instagram. And it's no substitute for scripture, but if you want to read about the first 52 churches in 52 weeks, it's on Amazon. I'll put all the information below. So for this week, I'm in downtown Chicago to attend the Moody Church. So on my drive over here, I actually had my GPS coordinates to attend a different type of religious setting. And I may do a side quest video on this or not. I'm not sure if I even want to visit this spot. But I got some weird vibes and decided, you know what? I've heard good things about the Moody Church. Let's do that instead. So with the Moody Church, it was founded by D.L. Moody. And my knowledge and information on this is very, very vague. So I understand that he was a prominent preacher in the 19th century, especially in downtown Chicago. He had a lucrative shoe business. He gave that up to spread the word of God. I guess he started up his own church, and one of his ministry focuses was on Sunday school. So thousands of children from the Chicago area would attend his church. So it gained so much prominence that I guess Abraham Lincoln himself had to attend one time just to see what it was all about. With the Moody Church, I've heard amazing things. I've heard good things about their choir, but other than that, I don't know much about it. Other than maybe just the Moody Bible Institute, and I hear several pastors have come out of that college, I guess. It's freezing. It took me forever to find some parking. I'm gonna run over there if I can, a couple blocks here. I don't know how long I have to walk to attend this. So I'll be back and I'll give you a little bit of a taste here of what it looked like inside. I may sound like Captain Obvious on this, but the Moody Church Children's Choir may rank as one of the best I've ever heard in my life. So for everybody that's a part of that, standing round of applause for everything that they're doing. That was just absolutely amazing. So it's been several days since I got back from the Moody Church. It's still freezing outside. With these visits, I like to go in as a newcomer. I'm no theologian, I'm no scholar. I may go in with some bare bone basics. But after this visit, I had to understand a little bit more before filming this portion of the video in terms of who exactly is D.L. Moody. So I did some research on their website and Wikipedia, but also some sermons from Moody Church pastors like Erwin Lutzer in the past, and the current one with Philip Miller. And the story on this D.L. Moody is just something to behold. So the backstory is, I guess he was born in 1837, and he was the seventh of 9 kids. His dad essentially drank himself to death, so by the time of 4, he was already fatherless. And it sounds like with mom, I don't think she remarried. And with 9 kids, the kids were kind of forced to make it out on their own if they want to get fed. So I'm kind of thinking some child labor was involved on that. So he grew up in a very harsh environment. So by the time he turned 17, he moved to Boston, he really didn't have much of an education, and he couldn't really find a job. So his uncle said that I'll give you a shot with my shoe business on the condition that you go to church. He agreed, and he started going to Sunday school, and that's where he met a layman called Edward Kimball. And I guess early on, Edward Kimball was teaching the Sunday school, and he told everyone to turn to the book of John. And with Moody, he didn't really know where that was. He's paging through the Old Testament. And Kimball did something that Moody can't forget. Kimball could tell Moody didn't know where it was, so he gave him his Bible with the page open up. And then he took Moody's Bible and obviously was able to turn to the right page in John. And over time, like Moody, and I think this is really, I haven't heard this specifically, but it really felt like with Kimball, he was kind of teaching and preaching about God's love for people. And I don't think Moody ever really got that as a kid growing up the way that he did. It kind of filled a void that he had from his entire childhood. And this really sparked Moody like crazy. And it seems like Moody was a go-getter. So he moved to Chicago really fast after this experience. And from what it sounds like I guess it was a Erwin Lutzer sermon I heard. And some of the details get a little bit fuzzy where this was, if it was in Boston or Chicago. But churches back then, they would actually have congregants pay for their pews. That's how they would offset maintenance expenses for the building. So Moody, like he moved to Chicago, he became very successful as a shoe business salesman, and he bought out 4 of these pews. And what he would do is he would invite some of the poor, some of these rascals in this neighborhood, and would bring them to church. He would bribe them with candy to fill up his 4 pews. Now, like I've been a part of this before. Like it ruffled a lot of feathers with the church at that time. Like even in my book, like I mentioned when I went to Lakewood Church, like there were 3 kids in front of me and they were like fighting over these communion cups. It was almost like Lunchables to them. And I remember it's just like I kind of had my nose in the air myself, so I totally get it. But Moody, the way that he grew up, like he had this heart for the kids. So that church didn't work out, and it almost was like he needed to start his own church. So he started up his Sunday school, and just thousands of kids would flock to this thing. And it got so popular, like I was talking to the front desk people at the Moody Church, where I guess it got so popular with the kids, like the parents had to keep going themselves, and they just kind of created their own church, the Illinois Street Church. And that was so successful that President-elect Abraham Lincoln had to check it out. And then eventually President Lincoln was inaugurated in 1861. And that's really when the Civil War started. So Civil War time, that kind of impacted the entire United States. Moody found himself in a different position where then he became part of the YMCA. And if for those that don't know, the YMCA actually stands for Young Men's Christian Association. So he did a branch of that to minister to Union troops. And I guess a few times he actually was kind of like he didn't want to participate in the war. He claimed to be Quaker, but he was able to minister at that time. So Civil War ends. President Lincoln is assassinated. Several years pass by. He's still kind of ministering and growing this Sunday school, this church in urban Chicago. And then that's when the Great Chicago Fire hits in 1871. And this is really where the Moody story almost kind of turns into this 19th century Job story. So Moody loses almost everything other than his family. He finds out his family's safe, but his home is gone. His church is gone. All his congregants, their homes are gone. Business-wise, like the entire city needs to rebuild. And and I guess the quote that he had around that time was, I saved nothing except for my faith and my reputation. So he had a reset. And eventually he, I wouldn't say he flew out because I don't think planes were around at that time. So he boated out to England. And that's where he met Charles Spurgeon and some of these great revival preachers, reform preachers from back in the day. And one name that stood out from another sermon I heard was from Henry Morehouse. So Henry Morehouse, that's not a household name, but this guy was, I think Moody could relate to him because this guy was a wild young guy himself. Morehouse was a pickpocketer. He was a gang leader. He was a thief. And over time, he eventually turned it all to Christ. So Moody would listen to Spurgeon preach. He would listen to Morehouse preach. And every single night, Morehouse would preach on John 3:16. Every single night with a new, fresh sermon. And I guess Moody got talking with him, and Morehouse mentioned how, like, it was all God. Like, nothing was pre-planned or written that Morehouse had. This was all Christ. And that really changed Moody's entire preaching style. So when Moody got back to the United States, I guess he was able to attract just tens of thousands of people with where he would speak. Even President Ulysses S. Grant had to check out his preaching just due to the popularity of it. So Moody would just go all over the place, all these different types of outreach ministries. He did ministries that would help out China. He did ministries that would help out Scandinavian countries. I guess right before his death, he was also reaching out. He was one of the last Protestants to reach out to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in 1899 before his death. They did a lot of things in memory for him. So that's where, I guess, the Bible college at that time, it was renamed the Moody Bible Institute. But one thing, too, is with the Illinois Street Church. That's where Moody would preach. And the congregation was spent decades to rebuild this church. And I guess it was, they finally built it. And I'll show a few pictures of this, and you probably noticed them in the montage. Like, it's everything I hear about Moody is he was very rotund, okay? That's what I keep hearing. He's bearded, he's rotund, and he wears business suits. And with the Moody Church, the building takes up the entire block itself. It's rotund in itself. It's modeled after this Romanesque type of architecture. And with the building, it's like it was built just with all brick. It almost looked like it was built to withstand any kind of fire. So the congregation had spent decades rebuilding this thing, and they were able to, I guess, release it and make it the actual building in 1925. They even have like some of the fire exit signs just modeled after that flapper type of decade setting. It's so interesting to see. When I got there, you really couldn't tell it was really a church. They had one big sign that said the Moody Church, but there wasn't a whole lot else to really indicate what the building was. And when you got inside, the very first thing you notice is just these huge chandeliers hanging over. Like, these were just ginormous. And several stained glass windows as well. I want to say there had to be 36 from what I read somewhere. All the stained glass windows were all unique. And the one thing you notice that they didn't have in this curvature type of setting was there was no crosses. There was no Christian symbolism per se. Everything was just very plain. When it came to the bricks, when it came to the wooden chairs, and the only thing that really indicated that it was some type of auditorium for a church was at the very front, where they right below some of these organ pipes was a verse from Hebrews 13:8. Jesus Christ, the same yesterday and today and forever, I believe it said. And just really interesting just to see how this was all laid out. So they eventually started the service, and I actually counted how many, I was shocked at just the amount of people that were up on stage, because they had a choir, and they're all wearing the choir robes. You also had the children's choir, and they're all wearing their robes. But then you also had all these musicians and a worship team, and people playing the flute, and people playing a trumpet, and then they had an organist. So I took a look at a picture just to, I'm going to count every single person who's up there. And I counted a total of 98 people that were up on stage worshiping. I don't think I've ever seen that many people on stage to worship before. And like I was kind of looking at the congregation, and it's like there were a lot of empty seats, I could tell. But as the service progressed, the more it kind of filled in. And I think it was mainly due to downtown Chicago. It's hard to find any kind of parking. After the worship service, I noticed more people kind of filling in the seats, and it hit me, oh yeah, that's some of these musicians are actually sitting with their spouses and their families to actually enjoy and listen to the sermon. But like 98 people, like that just threw me off so much. And one of the interesting things with this church, and I've only seen this one other time, that was in Tim Keller's church in downtown Manhattan, was the diversity for new members. So early on, they actually had all 9 new members come up for the church. And the bulletin actually listed like the country flags. I crossed off their names here, but the country flags from where they were from. So you had members from Ghana, Haiti, Colombia, South Korea, Egypt, and France. Then they also had 4 from the United States, and they were all from the Chicago area. Pastor Miller got up and delivered a sermon on Jonah. And Jonah is such a strange story because you got the big fish and everything, but then you also have this city with the Ninevites, and they're like the worst of the worst. Like there's so many parallels to today's society, but then like Jonah warns them, and the Ninevites do a complete 180. So what he was talking about is with Jonah, Jonah is kind of like this. He wants a God of karma. He doesn't want a God of grace. And I think one of the things that the big takeaway was with God, like he is a God of grace, and grace is our only hope ourselves. So he kind of described it as there's really 2 ways to separate from God. One, you can be like the Ninevites. You can be very bad. You can live for yourself. But 2, you can also be like Jonah. You can be self-righteous. And you can really kind of try to control and almost manipulate God for what he should be doing. And like that's not really how grace works. That's not how God works. So I really liked how he was able to kind of interweave all this different types of things into this story. But at the end of the service, the worship, because the majority of the worship members, all 98 of them or whatever it was, they had returned to their seats. Then they did a final closing song, and only about 4 or 5 people got up, part of their worship team for that. And they kind of ended the church with this hurrah, this go-getter kind of quote. So they ended it with, "Let's go and be the church." And that's how the church service ended. But afterwards, I kind of walked around. I got talking with the front desk. And one thing that I thought was so interesting is they actually invited me to, hey, it's like, yeah, if you want to walk around inside the church, take some pictures, go for it. No one else was in there. And it just was amazing to be in this building with so much history. And I don't know if it's true or not, but like I got behind the pulpit, and it's like I guess it was the pulpit that D.L. Moody preached from. I'm not sure on that, because with the Great Chicago Fire, I don't know if that was involved. Maybe he had a new one built after that. But it was just so fascinating just to kind of look out from that and see the amount of seats, and just envision just the amount of people that have been impacted and influenced by D.L. Moody. But also, like with D.L. Moody, yeah, he reached so many lives, but it all started first from Edward Kimball. Just this layman, just this guy that decided to help out and lead some Sunday school students. And that was really able to spark the drive inside D.L. Moody. So it's like, yeah, we may not be able to be D.L. Moody and just be this urban ministry pioneer, but we can all be someone as small as Edward Kimball to influence just the youngest of people. So that's week 30. Hope you enjoyed this video on D.L. Moody and the Moody Church. For next week, going to be driving out to South Bend, Indiana. We'll have more information posted soon on that. But if you want to stay updated, hit the bell icon. That will help you be notified with future notifications. Also, like and subscribe. That helps the channel with a YouTube algorithm to reach out to more people. But until next time, hope you have a good one.